Am I live
Tim?
now, Danny?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've given you the power.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It is true that I have a very large head. We've talked about this. It's hard.
Okay, stream's done. That's it.
That's it.
We solved it. We solved it.
It's hard
Now
for
we
me
know
to buy
who we have.
hats.
Yeah, you can't buy standard hats. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, they'll have them. They just might have to looking back.
So I think we're done with the analytics day, though, because here's why. So just send all of your analytics queries to Tim, and he will crunch the numbers in his very large head.
Tim's data.
What should we call you as a service? Like your head as a service. What would be a good? In the chat, come on, help us come up with some. Service names
could you please? I'm not watching the Twitch.
I think AWS Melon. Like if we were to productionize.
I was going to say Melon as a service. Melon as a service.
Yeah. I love it.
Okay. Tim, welcome to the stream.
Welcome.
It is so good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Could you please introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do, and where do you join us from?
Okay. My name's Tim Berglund. I run developer relations at a company called StarTree. That's an analytics startup focused on real-time user-facing analytics. I am an old friend of Danny's. And the big head joke is
it's been going a long time.
It's a long time. Yeah, it's a tenured joke. But I still love it. So.
Literally for 10 years. It's
tenured.
Yeah, there you go.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, Tim, where do you join us from? Where are you coming?
Yes. Littleton, Colorado, and I just flew in this morning, and boy, are my arms tired.
God! So did Sophie.
Right.
Yeah, she flew in.
Right. Yeah. I was in Mountain View this morning, and now I'm back home. So.
What a world
it's
we
great to
live
be
in.
It is. And so Tim, Darko and Danny, I just want to shout out to your Mac in the background. It's like right here. I have one.
Yes.
Yep. I have a classic Mac. There's some up. It's hard to point. These guys right up here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You just see them above my huge melon.
See, it comes back full circle, everybody. There's a reason we talk about it.
So actually, when we were talking before preparing for this meeting, I actually saw the Mac and I bought it. I bought it specifically so I can put it in the backdrop of this one. So There you go, a Mac SE. It doesn't work though, unfortunately. It's just a prop. But
this one does. The little DB25 SCSI port. You plug a drive into that sucker. It's got a bootable,
this
OS
one
2 partition or whatever. It'll boot up.
This one doesn't really, but hey, at least this looks nice. Speaking of looking nice, you want to talk to us about stream processing, basically doing data analytics on large-scale data.
Yeah, can I submit a query to this large-scale data and get a result and understand more about the things and the datas and the stuffs?
You would like to, is the thing, and
but it's hard.
So things are happening, right? We have this architectural paradigm shift that we get to live through. I like to say, I think nobody's ever really pushed back on me on this. Maybe somebody in chat will. But I really think the last major software architecture paradigm for the way business software gets written kind of happened in the late 80s, and we called it client server. It was a departure from mainframes, and it was where you had like PCs, these small.
You have upset someone already.
Good.
Excellent.
Yes.
Let's hear more.
So you had PCs and they talked to database servers. Then now we had this relational database technology. It was small enough and cheap enough. You could put it on little computers and sort of on a departmental scale build systems rather than, the giant thing with the priesthood that serves it. That was a major paradigm. Of course, the web happened, and we're not going to be able to settle this in this next 18 minutes, but the web didn't really depart from client server in a meaningful way. It was still that same basic paradigm, right? Networking changed, user interfaces took a step back 15 years because we thought it was a good idea. But the architecture didn't change. Now, all of a sudden, in the last few years, and as always, someone on the internet will point out that event-driven architecture is not new, but it is newly commonplace, right? In the last few years, we're building these event-driven systems. This is kind of the confluence of, I think, microservices and maybe some container technologies, and these things kind of come together.
What you did there. Yeah.
Yes, right. And I said confluence. this demands a new way to build systems. Also, and I'm just stating these things and not making the underlying arguments for them. So let me just state them for now. At the same time, and this feels so trite to say, but mobile devices happened, right? And
they're everywhere.
And we expect now, we just have an expectation, whether you know it or not, something happens in the world, in your digital world, which is increasingly like a lot of the transactions that govern your life are mediated digitally, and you expect something in your pocket to wiggle, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
What are you saying, Danny?
Oh no, I was trying to tell Steve to zoom in on my Apple Watch because like we're data points.
I thought you were like saying
Steve.
something about my head. Come on, Steve.
Come on, Steve.
Come on,
I'm waiting for you.
Zoom the watch.
There it is.
See,
there
every
it
day
is.
I'm making data.
See?
And
your watch is telling you when things happen. And you are now sort of accustomed to the fact that things happen in real time and you don't hear 4 to 6 weeks later, you just know now. And so the way this has led to event-driven architecture and the rise of systems like Kafka and their technologies in AWS, like that do the same kind of thing, native AWS things. And so there you are. You've got event streaming. Okay. So plop. Totally upsetting the stack that we use to build applications. We had this good thing going. Like last time I was really had a job where I wrote code for a living. It was great. You had a database, you had an application server, and you knew what life was.
Everything. Yeah.
And now the whole stack is different. So it's difficult. And like a lot of us are kind of building our first event-driven system, and we don't have all the pieces in the stack all figured out. So you got like, okay, and I'll just say Kafka is our event substrate down here, right? This is where the events are living. And up here, you've got, trying to get my fingers at the top of my frame here. You've got your actual differentiated application code. This is the stuff that does your business stuff and takes care of your customers. Right. Well, there's all this stuff in between that you used to know how to do, and now it's not clear. And so ask questions about what has happened, Danny. That's kind of what you started with. And I'm just taking 5 minutes to say, yes, you're right. How do I ask questions about what's happened in the stream?
Build up. Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like,
how do you know?
There was a payoff to all that. Yeah. How do you ask questions about what's happened in an event stream? Like people are kind of sold that event streams are the way systems ought to talk to each other. And if we're building real-time systems, we kind of need event frameworks. Databases are bad at that. But for materializing a view of what's true now or aggregating context about what has been true and asking in a quick way, in a kind of interaction layer sort of latency, question mark. And if you look...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
Oh, me? Okay. So, I mean, if you think about it too, from like the history that we talked about a little bit earlier, kind of just to bring this all home, what Tim's talking about, we collected a lot of data.
Right.
Then we're like, what do we do with all that data? And now we're at this other paradigm shift Tim's highlighting, which is now we have event data. Yes. How do we actually take those event streams and query them and get insights from them?
Right. Yep. Right. And there are two, I should have prepared a slide for this, but we're just jamming here. So I'm just going to draw curves in the air.
I like to riff. It's okay. You don't need to death by PowerPoint anybody.
I know this woman who has this very distinctive presentation style that she's used where she sits down with an iPad and just draws things. Yep. And it's super cool. Danny, you should meet. That's you. It's super legit. If I had that, I'd draw this curve. Anyway, so you have with event data, it's very valuable right now. Like you want to know what happened right now and get insight and be able to act on it. And the value of that event declines quickly over time because I know less and less about what's true in the world as we get away from the time that event occurred. So you want to respond right away. At the same time, accumulating context, the longer I'm able to say aggregate an average or whatever, I don't know, compute some aggregate, I get more and more value over time. So like I need to be able to respond to things, but I also need to be able to aggregate state. And when you look at how people have been solving that problem, we all know it's a problem. And it feels like there was just this big architectural paradigm disruption, which there was. And we're kind of casting about for answers and building a lot of it ourselves. I have spent a lot of time.
You mean to say we are reinventing the flat tire, Tim?
We're kind of reinventing. we're reinventing the flat tire, and it's the best we can do.
See.
I'm not like mad. It's not. I mean, no
We're
shaming
trying. We're
in
just
this.
bags of meat, after all.
And yeah, there's this like, oh crap, everything's different now. The tools I had
Right.
don't work anymore, and nobody's given me a better tool. So better tools start to emerge. Like say 5 years ago,
Correct.
you had Kafka streams show up. Okay,
Yeah.
well now I can in Java build like a little kind of limited special purpose real-time database. And there are lots of times when that's exactly what I want to do. And you'll get the various streaming SQL engines that are being done by different vendors where I can, query a stream with SQL basically. And these are kind of like attempts to solve this problem where what you're seeing is this differentiated application code. People are kind of building things down the stack because the stack hasn't come far enough up yet to meet them.
Right. Yep.
There's a space in between where it looks like we need a new kind of infrastructure for asking questions about what's happened in a stream. And that's the technology I work with is Apache Pinot. It is one of the technologies that lives in that space where it's like, I would like to ingest streams, please. And if you want, you can ingest your data lake. Your previous guest was talking about data lakes and extract, load, transform, and things like that. You can have, if you have giganimous piles of static data in your data lake or slough or jetty or data delta or whatever body of water kind of thing it is, you can bring that into Pinot. But the idea is ingest streaming data real fast, build it into tables, and serve queries on it.
Tell us what is Apache Pinot for the folks here who don't know, me included.
I'm so glad you asked. All right. Fundamentally, it's an OLAP database. So it's an analytics database optimized for computing aggregations over large sets of data. So if anybody listening, I'll just, you know what, I'm gonna do it. If you're new to the space and you hear people say OLAP and OLTP and nobody tells you what they mean, and you feel ashamed of yourself, you don't want to ask, that whole trap we put ourselves into. OLTP databases are databases that record the transactions ongoing in a system. They're usually concerned with like reading or writing this one thing. OLAP databases, you dump lots of data in and you ask questions about it. So they're concerned with like reading these things and computing aggregates over values in these things and slicing and dicing the data and all kinds. So it's an OLAP database. It's an analytics database optimized for real-time data. So on the ingest side, it's optimized to like hook up to Kafka or whatever your streaming data source is and suck in, a million events per second, and then serve queries on that data potentially in the like tens of millisecond kind of query latency. Now, obviously, these things exist on a distribution and they're not all that fast, but you can get meaningful queries out of it that you would actually use to power an application. And so the idea is this is a database not built for a dashboard. Like everybody is trying to be a slightly better, slightly cloudier dashboard solution. And there's a whole lot of activity. There's a lot of dashboards. There's a lot of money to be made there. There's a lot of room for lots of different approaches. But what Pinot is trying to
We're
be
functionalizing it, right? Like it's a little different in that it's not a BI tool. You're functionalizing it for application development and building smarter, better, and more insightful applications off of better, smarter, and more insightful data.
Yes.
Right?
So these are queries that serve user interfaces. So a good, well-known use case is Uber Eats. What's the average delivery time for a burger right now at this smash burger near me? That's an analytics query. And it's not okay if that takes 7 seconds to run, right? Like we're not going to go set up your Spark job and your workers and all that. That just has to happen. So that's the basic idea of Pinot.
And this also like ties into a comment by Ricardo here in the chat saying like data losing its value over time. I think that's a super point to this thing that you're talking about. What is the average delivery time of a local smash burger? Absolutely, it matters in this time and as longer as you move down the line, it matters less because it's not the same. It has changed, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
And when I'm
shout out to
food,
Ricardo, who sorry, Danny. Shout out to Ricardo in the chat here, who's made the same point. A report from Forrester called "Perishable Insights." So but back, I would like to talk about hamburgers, Danny.
Yeah. No, I mean, so whenever I'm thinking about food, which is often, the thing I always think about is, okay, I'm going to order this thing. How long is this thing going to take me, right? And I will abandon cart so fast if I have to wait for any amount of time that I have the brain and attention span of a goldfish. So it's really important. It's really important to get that fast.
Yes,
sounds like Pinot can do that. Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, that's the idea, is that it can power features in a user interface, not just a dashboard. So dashboard, if a query takes 5-10 seconds, whatever, we just need it to be kind of relatively fresh. But a user interface, it needs to feel alive and snappy and not clunky, and it needs to be responding.
Fresh insights, fresh food. I mean, come on, that's what we want.
So you get the kind of 50-ish millisecond range of latencies that you need to satisfy.
I like that performance. That's good.
So what data is important to us to get straight from a stream? Like when we talk about, this is one example, but I'm sure that people overestimate things they need from a stream. So when people are thinking, when developers are thinking, when builders are approaching this entire thing, what should they think about? Is this a thing I really need? What's a clear indicator of a thing you really need to get insights immediately from? How can one measure the freshness, the needness for a freshness of data?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so I'm going to give you two categories. One is it if you're there, and the other is somewhat aspirational and a kind of a new way I'm asking people to start thinking about analytics data. So on the one hand, there are use cases where nobody's asking that question. They're like, I am being crushed. I need this in 75 milliseconds or I'm going to die. Right. This is what the application needs to do. Somebody give me tooling. So if you're there in a lot of cases, and that's becoming more and more common for the developer or architect to be getting the demand from the uncompromising product owner, business stakeholder, whatever, and you just need the real-time thing. If you don't, like, nobody's beating you up, two things. Number one, maybe you don't, right? There are things that are not real-time, and there are other solutions, and do that. That's totally fine. But the interesting question here is, so what happened when I was a much younger man, and this early in the client server and the relational database days, when ETL was a brand new thing, and the idea of a report in the morning printed on paper, given to a well-dressed person in a corner office about what happened up until the end of the last day, that was amazing. And so the community of decision makers who had access to analytics were people at the top level of the organization. Now, as that kind of paradigm has evolved and improved by little bits and stuff, that's gotten pushed down the org chart, and more people are kind of customers of analytics. If you listen to data mesh thinkers, like if you just find a talk by Jean-Marc Degani about data mesh, and you'll get this idea that people at the bottom of the org chart need analytics now. Like, it's given, it's true. So here's the thing. If you're like, I don't feel the pressure, why do I need this? Yeah. The paradigm shift here is taking the community of decision makers from inside the organization. Like, we went from a few bosses to maybe people on the leaf nodes of the org chart.
Sorry, just 1 second. We've got a new shirt alert.
Oh.
Yes. I changed my shirt.
Nice.
So hello. Hi.
Okay. I didn't know I was supposed to do that.
Yes.
I would have been happy,
that's something that's something we do on this show. We change shirts. We wanted people to
Hawaiian
vote.
Shirts.
We wanted people to vote for more shirt changes because I have a really horrible shirt at the end. But please, important things. Data freshness.
So,
what you were talking about.
Taking from inside the organization, the paradigm shift is now
it trickled
analytics.
Down, right?
Yeah, it trickled down, but it's still inside the organization.
Yeah.
All the people inside the organization are decision makers. What I want to do is take your customers and users and include them in the community of decision makers.
See,
so
that's fresh.
That's fresh.
If you don't think you need real-time analytics, again, maybe you're right. But what I want you to think about is there a way that you can take the state of your system, whatever it is, like, I don't know what it is, but you know what it is. And is there a way you can expose that as a feature that your users see that help them make better decisions about how to do your thing? Like, literally every meal delivery service on planet Earth right now is doing that. Plenty of retailers, they're financial companies, like, pushing this data into user interface features. Now, all of a sudden, this is a profoundly real-time problem. You need a different kind of infrastructure.
What do you
Third
think,
thing,
chat? Do you think that's a big deal? Like,
Yeah.
what? How do you, digest that?
Yeah, Twitch chat, tell us, are you
chat.
actually consuming a lot of real-time data? Do you have the need, or do you even know, do you need the data? or
Right.
not?
Do you know what you know?
Yeah.
You don't know.
While you're chatting, I'm not looking
Tell
at
us in the
chat, but you
chat.
guys tell me. Third concept
Yeah,
is,
we got you.
again, you've migrated to event streaming, and you just need to know what's happened, and you don't want to build all this piece by piece. So plunk down an infrastructure layer, a new piece of infrastructure next to Kafka. That's Pinot. Ingest stuff into tables, query them. I can know what happened. I don't have to just know what's happening now. And that solves a problem that, like I said, we've kind of been casting about for solutions to in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, now requiring less crystal ball.
Yeah.
Oh, and so one thing when it comes to doing analytics on streaming data, what is the biggest hurdle you've encountered? What is the biggest problem, biggest pitfall that you have encountered, or you've seen other people do it, and you are sure somebody else will?
Yeah, I don't know that there's like one. It's the biggest problem with any of the streaming stuff is just that everybody's building their first system and nobody really quite knows how, even at the application level, right? Like, I could do this if I had a monolith and a database. Now I have these services interacting through event streams. It's just like architecturally difficult to think about, and you're getting things for your trouble, but just building an event-driven system is kind of hard right now because
So like
we don't have a lot of
architecture
experience.
uncertainty is a big challenge
Yeah,
overall.
yeah, just
like,
getting
industry-wide.
that job done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I'm the Pinot guy. I work for StarTree. We make a cloud service based on Pinot, blah, blah,
Like
blah.
to
Right.
drink
So I'm talking about
Pinot
Pinot.
wine, I assume. Yeah. yeah.
It's like, actually my employment contract says I have to only drink Pinot wine. It's a little known
I
fact,
see.
but here it is. But
The cab companies are going to be pissed.
they are, right? And they lost a major,
Sorry, that was terrible.
influencer. No, they didn't really. But knowing how to solve that infrastructure problem of making my streams queryable. There's just not a lot of awareness over the solutions that are out there yet because they're all kind of new. This is an emerging category.
Yeah.
So I didn't know you
Tim,
could
I have
do
to
that.
stop you right there, though. We've got an important question. Can we highlight that?
So
Yes.
is that an original 128K on your shelf?
No, thank you, Death Pirate. That is an SE. So it's from a few years later
SE.
than that. And the
Same
ones
one we
covered
have
up
here.
by my enormous head, as Danny would say, are Mac classics, the fake ones from the early 90s, but they're good enough to be on the shelf.
Yeah.
Indeed. So we actually collect a bunch of old computers here. As you can see, there's going to be like a Mac SE on our shelf there. Where we have Tim there running his Mac SE in the backdrop. I have a Commodore 64 here, and it's
Money.
just all kinds
my
of
fellow-
retro.
And for my fellow old timers, let's see back here. That's a 386 SX20 motherboard, I think. And this little blurry thing is a Seagate ST225 hard drive. It's
There we go.
blurry.
Throwing
Here,
it
you know what?
back.
Throwing
As
it back.
we're closing here, so I'll just rack focus to back
Yeah.
there. You can kind of see those.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, let's
an 8-inch.
make Tim. Let's
Can we zoom in on
let's
that?
put
Hold on.
Tim in
Let's
focus here.
put you
There
in
we go.
focus. Yeah,
There we
yeah,
go.
let's
See
do it.
back there. It's made inch floppies. There's an
Yeah.
old vacuum tube. Bought that at an antique store.
Wonderful.
Beautiful. We love it.
Thank you, Tim. Finally, there's an actual question, a good question
Well.
from Ref in Peace saying, what is the way to handle risks involved in losing/dropping events?
Big question. Can't really answer that in a quick way. So if you're losing or dropping events, something is broken in, like if you're using Kafka and you're dropping events, there's a bug. So if you mean, how do I mitigate the risk of that bug? There are ways in the last 4 years of Kafka to implement transactional guarantees that might help you with that. But yeah, ref in peace, that's a bigger
Could be a lot
question
of
than I can answer
different
right
things,
now.
too.
Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. Tim, we're going to wrap up. But before we do, I need to remove this. Before we do, one last piece of advice you can give to Tim from 5 to 10 years ago when it comes to large-scale data analytics. What is the thing of advice? What would be advice you would give yourself to kind of look out for?
What would you tell Cassandra Tim, or what would you tell like GitHub Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I would tell him, hey, buddy, microservices are going to be a thing. This stuff's changing faster than you know. I wouldn't, that Tim was going through a constant developmental process himself and sort of needed to get there. So I don't feel like he necessarily missed out on anything, but I would like for him to have seen events a little faster than he did. He would have made some different decisions in a couple places.
Yeah.
We didn't see that, and I'm not your wave a coming guy is the thing. I so like if I could talk to younger Tim, I'd tell him about the waves.
We love you, Tim.
We love you, Tim.
We love you.
Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you, Annie.
Everybody in chat, could you please go and vote on the survey on that side? Danny and I are going to come back in a second after this wonderful transition, and we're going to have another guest in the studio. Rohit is going to join us for a second. Tim, once again, pleasure. Keep
do it again. Thanks, you too.
Retro team. Bye. See ya. Bye.
Hey there! Thanks for checking out this video. Remember to give it a like and share with your community. Then hit subscribe and the bell for all the latest content that will help you build on AWS.